So essentially, I'm going to do two homilies where it's just like two short sermons, one now and one a little bit later, because the second one is much more a story. In my description about the service today, I said, in this worship service, we will explore and celebrate the origins of Mother's Day, which have little to do with what and how it is celebrated today. We also will name some of the difficulties of Mother's Day, but mainly we will hear a Mother's Day story from my ministry. It is a story where science and secrets collided. So, and this hymn, Abide With Me, reminds me of that inspirational narrative that I'm going to share. But it also reminds me of what I would call the sacred feminine archetype, which I think is with us a lot. Sometimes you've heard stories when soldiers may be dying that they don't as much cry out for sacred as mother, but I think mother is that archetype that's out there. And last week, I was at the Benedictine Center down in Ferdinand. Has anybody ever been there? It's wonderful. There's a lot of feminine iconography there. There's Mary Magdalene, there's Mary Mother of Jesus, Saint Hildegard von Bingen, and they're very inspirational and wonderful to see. And it's all over there. And so you're probably sitting there going, so what is this honoring the sacred feminine that you're talking about? This quote from Karen Tate talks about this, and it's the description of the sacred feminine archetype. Honoring the sacred feminine in the spiritual sense means valuing the feminine principle along with the masculine principle as equal and fundamental aspects of the sacred. From a planetary level, it means respecting and healing our Mother Earth. From a cultural standpoint, it means revivifying, which has become my new favorite word, revivifying the archetype of the sacred feminine through entertainment and the arts and using language that gives equal emphasis to the pronouns she and her. In the societal sense, it means recreating the role of the priestess. And somebody asked me why I wore my collar today, because I know I'm a spiritual leader, but when I go outside the doors, people don't. When I served in Louisville and I was in a very poor neighborhood, I started wearing my collar because there was such a spiritual hunger there. And people would literally stop me. I was in the parking lot once of my apartment, or when I was in a restaurant at one point and a man came up and said, "Is that for real?" Pointing to my collar, and I go, "Yeah, it is." And then he sat down with me, and he was a war veteran, and he wanted me to hear his story. So that having a more visual for the sacred feminine is a wonderful thing. And in a societal sense, again, the role of the priestess and respecting contributions of women in business, science, art, politics, music, as well as the home and community. In a religious view, it means offering ceremony and service that reaffirms our connection to the divine feminine, the goddess, the earth, and each other. And in the human sense, it's honoring the sacred feminine means especially valuing the innate worth of a woman's mind, body, and soul, as well as appreciating feminine qualities of the male character. That's a lot. That's a sermon in and of itself because it is still very countercultural. And I find with, I've preached here before about AI. AI, when I talk about sports or ask something, it immediately goes to the male team or whatever about that. So it's so in us that we don't see it. So to elevate the sacred feminine in all of our archetypes, for me, is a wonderful message of Mother's Day. Over the years, it's been my experience that Mother's Day, when I talk to parishioners, has so many different feelings that come up for people. And for some, it is a celebration of gratitude. From a pastoral perspective, I know Mother's Day can be bittersweet for many people. There are those who may be estranged from mothers or mothers separated from children, and then the feelings can be challenging or confusing on this day. Others live far away from mothers or children or people that have been like children to them. And others perhaps have been distanced by dementia or other illnesses. And of course, the death of our mothers, either long ago or recently, for those who have lost, or parents who have lost a child. It's a tricky day. It's actually, ministers kind of consider it the hardest day to preach because you're managing or you're trying to encompass all of those emotions. And we will get our hardest critiques on this day, as well as some of the more favorable pieces, if we can kind of hit that middle place. And I've certainly had lots of moms tell me that they find the Hallmark type of expectation of this day frustrating. Other mothers and fathers find themselves renegotiating the role of parent as an adult child moves back in with them. Other adult children might often find themselves stepping uneasily into the role of caregiver with an aging mother or father. So I just want you to think of all the people you know on this day who may be going through some of this. And is there somebody you could reach out to just to say, as I like to say, authentic Mother's Day? It doesn't have to be happy. It could be bittersweet. It could be this. But I'm telling you, people will feel the loneliness on Mother's Day. And that's why I like to say this, because there may be somebody you may just give a call to and say, hey, how are you doing today? So authentic Mother's Day. Lastly, just a little bit about the origin of Mother's Day. There's two stories that run the stream. One of them is Anna Jarvis back in 1905. Her mother had tried to start a Mother's Day, and it was much more about honoring all the deep caring that goes on. And then Anna came along after her mother died, and she had cared for her. And she said, we need to care for our elders. We don't do that well. This was in 1905. It's continued to this day. With our elders and how we care for them. And can we make this part of the Mother's Day? And so she tried to get a Mother's Day proclamation and things started. And that's also when the commercialism really kicked in with Mother's Day. And she did not like that. I read that she was even arrested for disturbing the peace while protesting the selling of carnations, because she felt this how it had become so much of a commodity really took away from the deepness that it takes to care and be with elders in their times of need. How many of you know the name Julia Ward Howe? Yes, she wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She grew up actually Episcopalian and became a Unitarian. And in 1870, she wrote the first proclamation of Mother's Day on June 2nd, 1870. Now, she was a strong abolitionist, and that's what her song, The Battle Hymn of the Republic, was about. It was about, we need abolition. We need to stop slavery. That was her biggest piece of that. And she also felt like we needed to bring together, women needed to bring together alliance of different nationalities to make and look at the great questions of the time to create peace. Wouldn't that be something now? I want to read you some of her words. 1870. Arise then, women of this day. Arise, all women who have hearts. Whether your baptism be of water or tears, say firmly, we will not have our questions answered by irrelevant agencies, which I think was the government at that time. Let us women now leave all that may be left at home for a great and earnest day of council. So let's all get together. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. That's a time of war. Let them solemnly take counsel with each other as to be the means by whereby the great human family can live in peace. And in the end, she said, in the name of womanhood and humanity, we earnestly ask that a general Congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held to promote the alliance of different nationalities, the settlement of international questions, the great and general interest of peace. I think that's a really good idea. And I would love to see that happen today. I mean, those words couldn't be more important than what we have. So on this Mother's Day, I want you to think about those who may be having a bittersweet Mother's Day. But I also want you to think about what it would be like and how we can, even in small ways, bring councils of women or the women archetype, which means both in men and women, together to really focus on peace. In a bit, I'm going to tell you the story of my friend Jean. She was a member of a congregation I served earlier. One of the things I remember about Jean, and I actually wrote this quote and put it up in my office. She was had turned 90, and I had called her, and I heard she wasn't feeling well, and I just love this woman. She was so kind and straightforward. I said, Jean, I hear you're not feeling well, and she goes, I'm not. And this was unusual. And I said, well, how are you doing? You know, how are you feeling? And she said, oh, to be young and 80 again. I love that perspective giver, and that was Jean. So today for Mother's Day, I'm going to tell you a story that involves Jean and some others. Authentic Mother's Day to all of you.
And now is the time that we will take up our weekly offering. So Tom will pass the plate and we will sing. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. Thank you all for your generosity today and every day. And now, though she thought she was going to get comfortable, I'm going to re-invite Marianne back to the pulpit for the meditation and the message.
The meditation is going to be a lively one. So I'll ask all of you to please stand as you are able. And I'm going to ask you to repeat after me, which some people always start going after me, after me, after me, because you're repeating after me, but that's not what we're doing. So this is a poem by Mary Oliver. I believe I've said this here before. So just follow my arms as we do this. And here we go. And for some people, the archetypes are Mother Earth and Father Sky. And so you bring them together. And it's so sunny and beautiful out here today. I just thought about this. Hello, sun upon my face. Hello, sun. Hello, you who make the morning. Hello, you make the morning. And spread it over the fields. And spread it over the fields. Into the faces of the tulips. Into the faces of the tulips. The nodding morning glories. The nodding. And even the windows. The windows. Of the miserable and crotchety. Of the miserable and crotchety. And then this is my favorite line. You just look to the sun. You don't look at it because it'll hurt your eyes. And you say, greatest preacher that ever was. Greatest preacher that ever was. Dear star. Dear star. Who happens to be where you are. Happens to be where you are. In the universe. In the universe. To keep us from ever darkness. To keep us from darkness. To hold us in your great hands of light. To hold us in your great hands of light. And to give us warmth in our day. And to give us warmth in our day. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Watch now as we start our day
Watch now as we start the day
in happiness and kindness.
in happiness.
Thank you. Sometimes when I look out my window in the morning, I'm like, oh, I'm one of those miserable and crotchety ones right now. I need some coffee. So I love that blessing that blesses the tulips, the nodding morning glory, and those who may be having a hard time as well. It just named so many things. So thank you for joining me with that. And now a Mother's Day story involving my friend Jean Black Knowlton, a longtime member of a former congregation I served. Jean died after a brief illness on March 23rd, 2019, at the beautiful age of 91. With the blessing of Jean before she died in support of her family, I share this story on Mother's Day that happened in 2017. Jean and I were going to do a Mother's Day service about the story on 2019, but she died a couple of months before. So a little bit about Jean. She was an English teacher, active church member in the Mormon Church, and then later became a Unitarian Universalist and supporter of her beloved family. She was born on October 21st, 1927 in Cowley, Wyoming, one of 8 children. As the eldest daughter, she helped raise her younger siblings. So again, there's that mother archetype. When the family moved to California, so her father could work in a wartime shipyard, she actually took the children. She was 15 and on the train alone, and she was the mama then, and took that whole trip to California. After the war, she met James Q. Nolan, an Army Air Force veteran and fellow student at Brigham Young University. They were soon married. They ended up in Bloomington, Indiana, where they raised their 3 sons, Kim, Brian, and Scott, and lived a fulfilling life. Jean's husband died in 2002, and Jean lived independently until her death in March again of 2019. But in 2017, a very different Mother's Day began in Jean's life. What I remember initially about Mother's Day 2017, when I think back to it, is walking into the Unitarian Church sanctuary where I served on a Sunday. It was Mother's Day, and I had a Mother's Day card in my hand. It was for Jean. At the moment, I could not share with anyone else why I had stopped at Target the night before and bought it for her. I found Jean sitting toward the back of the sanctuary, not usual for her. I handed her the card. We both smiled a bit with tears in our eyes, hugged, and with a very few words exchanged, I returned to focus on the worship service. 4 days before that Mother's Day Sunday, Jean had received an evening phone call from her daughter-in-law, Dawn. That was Thursday, May 11th, 2017. Now, this gets a little tricky with names. Her daughter-in-law, Dawn, had been contacted by a 40-year-old woman named Vicky, a retinal surgeon in Salt Lake City. Vicky was trying to puzzle out the identity of a mystery relative who, according to her 23andMe DNA testing for ancestry, was a very close relative to all of Dawn's children, Jean's grandchildren. Dawn wondered out loud then to Jean. She said, if the mystery person might be Jean's late brother, Homer, who had led one might describe as a more exciting life than most of his siblings. Dawn asked Jean, do you think this could be? Do you think Homer may have had a baby we didn't know about that? And this seemed a very logical answer. Dawn said the woman, Vicky, who contacted her, said even her children looked like Homer's daughters. Jean was in shock and simply responded, yes, I suppose that's possible. Jean called me that evening to say she needed to meet with me. I suggested we meet the next day, and she said, and I will never forget this because of the tone in her voice, I need to meet now. We met in my office. She filled me in on a story that began nearly 70 years ago. Again, she was 89. Now, meanwhile, back in Salt Lake City, Vicky, whose 23andMe genetic testing sparked the search for a mystery someone who would be her grandparent, and more notably, the parent of her mother who had been adopted. Vicky realized she had been focusing on the men in the Black family as the missing link, but now started thinking about the women. She knew then she had to call Jean. So she tracked down Jean's phone number and called it. So this was the next day after we met. This was on Friday, May 12th, and resulted in a stunning conversation because at some point, 89-year-old Jean Black Knowlton paused and quietly said, "Vicky, you are speaking to your grandmother." Jean called me that night and recounted the call. Together, we tried to discern her next steps. First, she knew clearly that she needed to break the news to her sons that they had a sister. And her sister's name was Marcia, and they had a cousin, Vicky. I met with Jean on Saturday morning, and she had her letters in hand that she was ready to mail to her sons. She had gone over this, and it was written from the heart. Again, with their permission, I share the letter now that was sent to Brian and his two other brothers, Kim and Scott. May 12th, 2017. Dearest Brian, and then his wife, Connie. This is about a family secret. Thursday night, your cousin Dawn, my brother Fran's daughter-in-law, called telling me that her kids, Francis, Dawn, and Robbie, each had had their DNA done. They were discovered by a 40-year-old woman doctor in Salt Lake City who shared Fran's DNA. Dawn asked me, how could this be? Could this be Homer's baby? Jean writes, this seemed like a logical answer. Investigating further, Dawn said the woman looked like Homer's girls. I was, as you can imagine, flabbergasted. The birth certificate contained a woman's name. It was issued in Idaho since Utah did not recognize abandoned babies. The father's name was not listed since it would bring shame to the family. And then Jean writes, oh yes, shame to the family. And so it began. I knew it was time to tell you. If any of you had your DNA done, you would have known. Dad and I fell in love quickly and engaged soon. Then I discovered I was pregnant. I was 18 and obviously quite immature. Dad, who grew up basically without a mother, had years of schooling ahead. Neither of us wanted to share with our family, so we decided to marry quickly, but placed the child up for adoption. And she goes on to write, Dad could not face telling Grandpa Knowlton, and this was a Mormon family. I knew my family would not love me if they knew. The child was placed with a family of doctors unable to have children. I felt we had done the best we could for the girl. And so the years went by, 70 years. We took the easy way out again during those years, never telling anyone. When Dawn called, I realized what a coward I had been. Surely my family could eventually forgive me. I was and am afraid you will be ashamed of me. I couldn't survive without your love. This is from an 89-year-old. Nevertheless, I had to tell you, you deserve to know about your sister and niece and cousins. And as soon as you get this letter, I want to talk to you. I will call Dawn, tell her the story, and find out what she wants to do next. You will, of course, decide what you want to do with the story and how your son should be told. This letter should come by Monday. All my love, Mother. That was Saturday morning, the day before Mother's Day. Now, her son, Brian, a journalist, chronicled the story later, and I wanted to share with you a little bit of what he wrote. And he wrote about both those family in Utah and the one here. He said it was like a dam bursting. One side, the one in Utah, 7 decades of doubt and agonizing curiosity and unanswered questions, And on the other side, 7 years of secrecy and shame, and yet we're both hope and maybe second guessing. After Vicky had that call with Jean, when Jean said, "You are speaking to your grandmother," she called her mom, Jean's daughter, Marcia. Marcia was, needless to say, stunned. The glimmer of hope she had earlier from Vicky's discovery with the DNA now turned into solid reality, an end to a lifetime of questioning, and yet it didn't feel real. She turned off her computer and sat quietly thinking. Still dazed by this breathtaking reversal of fortune, she tried to imagine meeting with her birth mother. Now, her daughter, Vicky's first thought was, "I have to meet my new grandmother and bring her together with her daughter." She told Marcia she was going to try to set up a reunion. But there was one problem. Marcia had health problems that prevented her from flying. And Vicky wondered, this is my favorite part, do 89-year-olds fly? She called Jean back and was thrilled to hear that flying was a possibility. The meeting could be arranged. But then Jean told her that she needed to talk to her sons first. At that time, Vicky's heart sunk at the thought that the children, the sons, Brian and Scott and Kim, might not talk to their mother out of coming, may talk their mother out of coming to Utah. So Jean had a mixture of excitement, delight, a relief at knowing that her daughter was alive and well and wanted to meet her. But that was leavened by this fear, this deep fear that her sons and her siblings, kept in the dark all their lives about Marcia's existence, would feel deceived, resentful, and even angry. Still now, she had no choice. So that's when she wrote that letter and sent it out that began, "This is about a family secret." Now, she sent that on Friday, and it would get there Monday, but she couldn't wait. She actually called each of her sons. And although surprised, they all offered their loving support. And yes, the reunion happened with the daughter, the granddaughter, Vicky, and all. And I remember one detail when Jean told me about it later. When Marcia was speaking to her, she asked Jean, "What shall I call her? Call you?" Jean told her she could call her Jean or Mom, whatever. And Marcia chose Mom. I believe one of the reasons, and Jean said this, that she wanted to share her story with everyone is because she knew all too well the burden of carrying a family secret or carrying anything that we feel might not let us feel like we belong. When I spoke to her about sharing her story on Mother's Day back then in 1990, she had hoped it might inspire others and bring hope to unresolved family situations that you think that could never be resolved, that could never be happen. But sometimes it does, even 70 years later. I told Jean that my spiritual mentor, Angelus Arian, often said, "That which we witness, we are forever changed by." So when we witness something like this story, then we are witnessed and changed. But also, when we are witnessed ourselves, we can never go back. So once the story comes from our lips or in other ways of art, we don't go back. It has been witnessed, and that is sacred. So on this Mother's Day, this is a sacred story that you have witnessed, and you will never be the same again. And also, for Jean and their family, this story, they can never go back, which is a good thing. And so as we look at this, I say once again, authentic Mother's Day. Whatever Mother's Day means for you, and you may be going through levels of feelings throughout the day, May it be a blessing for you. May it be something you hold in your heart. And like those opening words, we look for those who can both comfort us and we can comfort others. One more thing that really helped me, my mom died about 20 years ago. And and I was pretty bereft. My dad had died when I was in my 20s. My brother died when I was in my 30s. My mom died when I was in my 40s. And it just felt like so much loss. And my spiritual mentor said, one of the things that happens sometimes when we lose our mother here on this earth is that we can build a new sacred relationship with Mother Earth herself. It's like there's more room for that. And I was like, at first I was like, I don't know about that. But then the more I had that in my heart, and my mom was part of that, that connection with the earth. But talk about abide with me. When we are in sacred relationship with earth and sky, then we have that something that can abide with us wherever we are. Authentic Mother's Day to you all. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Let us now walk out in happiness and kindness as we finish. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marianne. I love that story. And it kind of made me cry too, so I'm not going to lie about that. Here are our closing words for today. Take this as an invitation to imagine how wide this world can be, to face the closing doors before us and move toward the opening window in our lives. Take this as an invitation to remember a critical truth, that none of us have it all figured out, that we help one another grow and change. Take this as an invitation to cross thresholds of challenge, not on our own, not for ourselves alone, but side by side, spirits rising and expanding together. Let us go now and share our gifts and truths with each other and with this world. Blessed be.